Well, what do you know? The OPCW finds no evidence of sarin gas. Weapons inspectors have concluded that there were chlorinated chemicals in an attack on a Syrian rebel holdout that triggered retaliatory airstrikes from Britain, France, and the US. Chlorinated chemicals. But while they found evidence that chlorine was used, there was no proof of the use of sarin or any other nerve agent, as claimed by the US. And we should really say, as claimed by the US corporate media, which just serves as stenographers for the US government. And I'm reading a great book, actually, by Seymour Hersh, who I'm going to play a clip from Seymour Hersh as part of this story. You got to read, if you have time this summer, read Reporter. It's a memoir of Seymour Hersh, who's a great reporter's career, and he goes in depth on all of the examples that he dealt with in his career of the Associated Press, the New York Times, all the media companies he worked for, essentially just regurgitating lies the government fed them. It's really, really interesting and really, really infuriating at the same time. At least 70 people were killed and 500 more injured in attacks on Douma in eastern Ghouta in early April, which led to accusations that the Syrian government had used chemical weapons. But the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, inspectors entered Douma in the weeks after the attacks and have now revealed that 2 samples recovered from gas cylinders at the scene tested positive for chlorine. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has repeatedly denied using chemical weapons during the long-running civil war, although the OPCW has previously documented the systematic use of banned munitions, including sulfur, mustard gas, and sarin. The results show that no nerve agents or their degradation products were detected in the environmental samples or in the plasma samples taken from alleged casualties, the OPCW report states. Along with explosive residues, various chlorinated organic chemicals were found in samples from 2 sites for which there is full chain of custody. Work by the team to establish the significance of these results is ongoing. No blame has been appointed for any of the attacks in Syria investigated by the OPCW, with Russia accusing the UK of having staged the bombardment in April. Despite facing a backlash for not allowing MPs to vote on UK involvement in the retaliatory Western military action, Theresa May said at the time it was morally and legally right to respond. US President Donald Trump was unapologetic for the strikes, which were focused on 3 chemical weapons and research facilities, describing the Syrian leader as an animal. So you would think, right? Oh, if I'm MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, Reuters, the whole gang, you might want to do a little something on the fact that you just pretty much regurgitated as stenographers, whatever the hell, liars for the CIA, the FBI, the Pentagon, the Homeland Security told you. You might, because this wasn't like they did a 30-second segment on Assad gassing his people. I mean, there was a drumbeat. And, oh, Trump, he's acting so presidential by bombing Syria now. We have to respond to Assad gassing his people. Do we have evidence? Well, you know, we have to respond. Well, do we have evidence? Oh, we have to respond. Oh, do we have evidence? We have to respond. Crickets. Crickets on this. I mean, the initial investigation from chemical weapon inspectors who took samples from victims and went down to the areas where these attacks happened. Chlorine. Chlorine. Not sarin. So why is this important? Because it's madness. It's madness. We keep bombing countries. We keep invading countries with either totally fake intelligence or no intelligence at all. And this isn't just a Trump problem. This is a American problem. And we have a media that literally doesn't report anything. They just repeat. We have a media that doesn't report on anything. They just repeat what their sources, i.e. the CIA, the FBI, the Pentagon, tell them. because they don't want to lose access, and they don't want to seem unpatriotic, because it's unpatriotic to say, hey, you know, do you want to wait till like the chemical inspectors go in before we bomb these countries? Because, you know, when you keep bombing these countries, you're only emboldening ISIS and Al-Qaeda and creating the next ISIS. I just find it so incredible that you literally, this media, right, rants about fake news. Rants about fake news and Breitbart and all these things. And they should. Fox News, propaganda. Unprecedented propaganda. You have Breitbart, propaganda. Rush Limbaugh, propaganda. I mean, a lot of propaganda out there. And they call for them to correct themselves. And they attack them. But they don't hold themselves to the same standard. Because when they repeat falsehoods and lies from the government, they do so proudly, they do so persistently, and they don't correct it at all. Because this isn't like, oh, we dropped bombs, a big deal, no harm done. No, no, no. This is what breeds terrorism. This is what breeds terrorism, when you're continually bombing other countries for no reason. Do I think Bashar al-Assad is a good person? Hell no. Do I think he's gassed his people in the past? I do think there's evidence he's gassed his people. At least once. Did I think there was evidence he did it this past time in Douma? No, I don't. It didn't make sense. He's pretty much won the war. The Syrian government and the rebels were starting to negotiate. So I want to take you from one example where it just came out, no sarin gas, no nerve agents, no chemical weapons. No need to actually report on that. The New York Times had a brief article and barely even mentioned the fact that they were wrong and they helped spread a lie that helped bomb a country. We don't need to worry about that. But I want to play you part of Seymour Hersh, the journalist I just told you about, because he's basically, through his reporting, which I trust his reporting over CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, this is a man who has sources high up in the government and deep within the deep state. You're damn right the deep state exists. And he's saying Russia didn't hack the DNC or Podesta, and he has sources and evidence for that. But just like they repeated this bullshit about chemical and nerve sarin gas, which has now been proven to be untrue, they're still putting this stuff out there, fed to them by the U.S. government. So here is Seymour Hersh. He was on the Intercepted podcast, which is the Intercept podcast. It's really great with Jeremy Scahill. I want to play you just a little bit of what Seymour Hersh said.
In the area where she reports that makes baby cribs, it used to be kids fell out of cribs because they could pull them down. Now they're much stronger. There's requirements that they have to make them to certain specifications. They got it changed. They lobbied to get it changed, a couple of companies, and because they can make an extra 17 cents per copy or whatever, it's being litigated. But that's the kind of stuff down the line that people should, I'd like to see more reporting of that. But, you know, that's in Plato's Republic, maybe. We're going to stick to his tweets. You're not going to beat this guy unless you do something different.
There's this sort of metamorphosis that's taken place where, I mean, I will give Trump credit for getting Fox News and Sean Hannity to stop advocating for the total obliteration of North Korea. I mean, it's really interesting to compare how North Korean media reported on that and Fox News. It was very, very similar. But the MSNBC, the so-called liberal network, is just beating the drums for war and having on an endless string of generals to criticize this. And you have the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, basically saying we need to put more sanctions. We also have a very uncritical reporting or repeating every allegation against Trump. No matter how wild it is, it just must be true because it's Trump. And it's like all standards are completely gone, particularly when we're covering the issue of election interference. And I'm wondering, a year ago, a year and a half ago when we spoke, you were very critical of the way that the broader news media was reporting on the so-called Trump-Russia affair. Has your assessment changed at all, and is that a legit story?
Wow, you go right to it, don't you? Let's just start with this premise. After 9/11, before we invaded Iraq, we were told by the American intelligence community that they had high confidence. That phrase was said again and again, that Saddam Hussein had WMDs. They're saying now the same thing about Russia. I have been reporting something, I've been watching something since 2011 in Libya, when we had a Secretary of State that later ran for president. And I will tell you, some stories take a long time. And I don't know quite how to package it. I don't know how much to say about it. I will assure you that there's no known intelligence that Russia impacted, cut into the DNC Podesta emails. That did not happen. I can say that. I can also say Russia learned other things about what was going on in Libya with us, and instead of blowing, oh God, this is too tantalizing. Why do you ask me these questions? We deal with Russia a lot. We deal with Russia much more than you know. We coordinate with Russia even in the worst of times. They say deconfliction. Deconfliction, I'm going to digress, but deconfliction is the notion that when we're flying, any American pilot wants to know where the Russian planes are, where the Syrian planes or the Iranian planes are during the war there. That war's pretty much over. The Kurds have made a big concession. And whether you like it or not, a lot of people hate Bashar Assad, and he's despicable, but you name me a guy in the Middle East that isn't. You know, the Saudis, they're better. I mean, you know, you tell me. Anyway, the beginning of deconfliction, it was a small group of very, very secret offices in America and our allies, the French, particularly the Brits, all of our allies after World War II and during the Cold War. If we were going to kill somebody, and this is, I hate to say it, America does do these things. If we were going to kill somebody, we had to set up a form to make sure the person we were going to kill, overseas maybe, wasn't an asset of one of our allies. And that's how deconfliction started. So it was just the back channel. And so Russia deals on a very sophisticated level with the United States, with people in Israel, with people in Iran, I mean, it's just amazing. There is a background of cooperation and military cooperation, because despite all the feelings about Russia, they have one thing in common with us. It's nothing to do whether you like Putin or don't like Putin, or whether you don't like the government or you like the government. They're against the kind of terrorism we're similarly against. And there was a lot of pressure on Bush and Cheney after 9/11 by the rational people in the government. The first stop should have been not to declare a war on an idea, which is, everybody knows is how stupid that was. I mean, how are we doing? 18 years in Afghanistan, how's it going? You know, against the Taliban, which didn't do the bombing against us. That was the Bin Laden anyway. I'm trying to parse words here.
I realize I put you in a difficult position.
The fact of the matter is, if Russia wanted to cause a lot of difficulty to the American election, they could have. Instead, they went and talked privately to us. So when the government says Russia intercepted stuff that was very important to us, I'm being very fuzzy about it, it wasn't about the election. They told us that there were certain people in America doing things that were very deleterious to the war on terrorism for personal and financial gain. And they could have blown it publicly, but they went internally to us. And this is a real difficulty, because it's a story. I did this memoir in between. I couldn't do my Cheney book because of a source issue. And I did this memoir during the time and all that stuff. But basically, I'm still doing it because it's a great fucking story. But I can't tell you more about it. You know, Jesus, Jeremy, now I'm being coy. I don't want to be coy.
No, there's been 22 indictments. A lot of it has nothing to do with the direct allegation that's being made around the clock. There are some interesting questions about meetings in Trump Tower, particularly the role of Don Jr., Jared Kushner, and others. They seem to be all somehow gravitating toward calling Russians connected to the Kremlin, meeting with them, setting up meetings. General Flynn is on the phone, not so much to collude with Russia, but to collude with Israel and to try to get Russia to advocate the Trump position at the UN while the Obama administration was still in power. It's like Iran-Contra for dummies in some ways. Everything that we know about all of the circumstantial evidence there, are you saying that that is just that it's circumstantial and they happen to be constantly having these meetings on the phone, doing things to subvert the Obama administration before they took office?
I'll tell you what somebody told me who actually knows something, which is none of us do. I mean, I don't know anything about it. I don't know what Mueller's doing. I know he's seen the tax stuff early, and he didn't indict. There wasn't enough there to indict, which is really interesting to me. Somebody who actually...
You're talking about Trump's tax returns? Or
he got it right away. Somebody knows something about how the meetings go.
This is what it's like, though, when you talk to an actual, real investigative reporter. Cy likes to say, that's my business, don't ask me about that.
Stumbles, he mumbles.
No, you're trying to figure out how to talk about something you should be talking about.
This is something he said to me. Collusion involves, this is somebody been firsthand. This isn't like you read in the Washington Post 19 interviews with people that maybe know something, you know. My favorite thing is on MS and NBC and CNN, and even the other idiot channel. They're all pretty idiot channels. I mean, it's the lowest form of journalism is what the cable news does. When you get a panel going and the narrator says to the panel, journalists are there and politicos and others, they say, what's going on now in the White House? And they all begin with the most lethal 2 words in the world, I think. Because nobody knows nothing. Nobody says, how the hell do I know? Which is the right answer most of the time. So somebody who really does know something. He said, here's the thing about collusion and Trump. Collusion suggests, this is literally what he did with the coffee cup, there were 2 of them. He said, collusion suggests that Trump does this because he knows how it's going to impact this. And he said, the reason you can't get mens rea because it's all impulse. He does this, period. But wait, I'm serious. But I'll tell you how it works. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a secret. Okay, you want a secret? Okay.
It's just you and me here anyway.
Yeah, right. Trump goes to see the North Korean creep, right? And 6 months ago, they were like 2 pit bulls with a wire fence between them having a ball, going at each other. So now he's going. And, of course, everybody's mocking it, the Democrats in particular, which, again, will they please articulate a policy, you know?
I could play that a little longer, but you get the gist. So why I played that is you have an actual journalist, not the CNN journalist, not the MSNBC journalist, not the New York Times, who literally just regurgitates what the CIA, the FBI, and Homeland Security, and the Department of Defense tell them. Like, Seymour Hersh left corporate media years ago, and he doesn't get talked about. He's not on the Sunday shows. He's not invited on CNN because he doesn't regurgitate what government liars tell him. And Seymour Hersh said something very powerful and very matter of fact. And I trust him because he's, knowing his record, he's rarely wrong. Said John Podesta and the DNC weren't hacked by Russia. I've been saying I have seen no forensic evidence that Russia hacked the DNC or John Podesta. I've seen a lot of circumstantial evidence. I've seen a lot of speculation, but I've never seen any actual evidence of such. So you have a journalist who has won awards for investigative reporting, did monumentally important reporting on Vietnam and the atrocities at My Lai, I think it was called. The bombings which killed, I believe, over 100 innocent Vietnamese. So you have Seymour Hersh basically saying, yeah, no. I've spoken with sources that no. And I've seen evidence that, yeah, no. DNC Podesta, not hacked by Russia. Seen evidence that Russia actually found out information about American plutocrats doing some shady things when it comes to Libya to enrich themselves, and instead of going public, just told their American counterparts. Why don't we hear about that on the news? Why is he not invited on? Why don't we get this perspective? Why don't we have journalists asking him, well, can you tell us more? I mean, it's mind-boggling. He said 2 or 3 things in that 10-minute clip that is more actual reporting and information than we've heard from all of the corporate media combined on Russia and interference in 2 years. It's unreal. So why I played that is to go along with this OPCW report. The media and the corporate media is not here to tell you the truth. They're not here to investigate anything. They're not here to inform you on anything. Particularly, they don't want to actually spend money to have people go out and investigate. I'm an example. I was just in Flint for 2 weeks. I was talking to one outlet in particular. They wanted the story and the bombshell story that I'm about to reveal, that I'm working on now, but they didn't want to pay for me to actually be out there and knock on doors. So there's not an interest in actually breaking real news. There's not an interest in actually saying, all right, the government tells me this. Let me go look here because I think they might be lying. Or maybe I shouldn't just automatically believe what they're telling me. Another thing he reported that I haven't heard from anyone, that Mueller got Trump's tax returns right away. Wasn't enough in there to indict him. Have you heard that from anyone? Again, he's Seymour Hersh, no slouch, won some serious awards. Worked for the Associated Press, the New York Times, Chicago paper too. I trust when he says this. So, Seymour Hersh, Podesta, DNC, not hacked by Russia, sorry. Trump's tax returns, Mueller got him right away. Not enough to indict. And apparently there's some Americans that enriched themselves off of us destroying Libya. Thank you, Hillary Clinton, by the way, for destroying Libya. And Russia found out about it, but instead of going public, told America. By the way, this isn't me being like, oh, Putin's great and Russia's great. Of course, Russia did try send an army of online trolls and all that stuff to interfere in the election and to confuse voters and all these things. It's called propaganda. It's not Pearl Harbor. It's basically social media bots. You know who else does that? David Brock, ran Hillary Clinton's super PAC. Social media propaganda is not unique to Russia. It happens here in America. But Russia has been made into this boogeyman for the Democratic Party with no evidence. Zero forensic evidence that Russia hacked anyone. So I think it's pretty big news when we bombed a country in Syria on the media just cheerleading, oh, Assad gasses people. Well, it just came out that's not true. It's a lie. L-I-E. Spell it with me, folks. Lie.